Howdy guys, Jimmy Song here. Welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Tech Talk Q&A. We are up to issue number 191, which is kind of crazy. I can't believe I've been doing this for so long. Anyway, got a lot of things for you today. Let's just go straight. Let's see, this is it. Okay, Bitcoin strategy for Merge Security Bitcoin Tech Talk issue number 191. And I want to talk a little bit about security and being vulnerable to certain types of attacks. Now, there's a lot of ways to become more vulnerable, right? Like essentially anything that increases your attack surface is making you more vulnerable. And that means stuff like moving into a seedier neighborhood or downloading malware or putting your social security number onto a forum or leaving cash in a shoebox in your closet, something like that. All of those are sort of secure, like make you more vulnerable. The only way to really reduce your attack surface is to reduce vulnerabilities, and that's the path that you have to take in order to reduce security vulnerabilities. Now, what's interesting about Bitcoin Core is that in 0.20, what I noticed were a bunch of things that were essentially removed from the protocol. So for example, BIP61 is the reject network message, and that was put in there by Mike Hearn, or was it Gavin Andreessen or Mike Hearn, one of those two, as a way to indicate to a peer node, hey, I'm going to reject this transaction message because it's messed up, something like that. Now, you shouldn't really trust these reject messages, so they don't really do anything for anybody. And as a result, they deprecated it a while ago. Now it's just not going to send it starting in 0.20, and that's a very good thing, because something that's useless is just an additional attack surface. And if you're not using it, you should really get rid of it from a security perspective. Similar thing for OpenSSL and BIP70. So OpenSSL was put in there as a library starting in the original Bitcoin client as a way to be able to use ECDSA cryptography and SHA-256 and things like that, which are all integral parts of Bitcoin. But since then, there have been highly optimized, much better implemented stuff like the libsec 256k1 library and I guess a different SHA-256 library and so on, which are a lot, which means that you don't have this external dependency. If you remember, OpenSSL had the Heartbleed vulnerability not too far back. So, and it was revealed then that it was like one half-time developer on this very important open source project. So by getting rid of the OpenSSL dependency, what it makes it a lot easier to create more secure software, because now you control the stack essentially. BIP70 was a payment protocol that was put in there by Mike Hearn and Gavin Andreessen, and he they both were pushing it really hard. It had ways for refunds and stuff, but it was not privacy preserving. It actually leaked a lot of information, and BitPay actually wanted to make this a standard, and they finally gave up on it earlier this year. It's being completely deprecated as part of 0.20. Now, BIP37 is also another deprecated feature, which creates a lot of vulnerabilities from a denial of service angle. But BIP37 is going to be also sunset, although not necessarily in 0.20. So, and this is something that we need to know about Bitcoin, is that if it's a feature that's not getting used, then it needs to go away, because it increases the attack surface. And this is one of the things I really respect about Bitcoin's development. It's good code is not adding lots and lots of things. It's when you've removed everything that's extraneous, right? Like, it's perfect when you have nothing left to take away. And that's sort of the philosophy that Bitcoin Core has had. One thing that's gotten some press is this ASN bucketing feature. So there's this particular attack called Erebus that some researchers put out. Basically, it requires isolating your node and doing certain things with it. But using the ASN bucketing feature, it makes isolating the node very hard, because if if you're trying to isolate the node, you need a lot of IPs in order to isolate it with. Usually they come from the same sort of range. So unless you have a diverse set of different IPs, this bucketing feature makes it so that choosing peers for a node, it's harder to isolate a node, and this Erebus attack is mitigated. The last thing that I wanted to point out is this entire UTXO set being like, there's an option to dump the entire UTXO set. So hopefully you can leverage this feature in order to sync Bitcoin a lot more quickly. Part of what takes Bitcoin so long to download or to sync, it isn't necessarily the bandwidth or the download. It's actually the CPU in order to check every single transaction and to create that UTXO set. But if you have another node running that you trust and you can download, just get the UTXO set for a particular block, then all of that calculation up to that block you don't have to do, and that would be very useful. And that's a very good thing. All right. Anyway, I love all of the cleanup and removal of bad features. I don't think it's a coincidence a lot of these bad features were from Gavin Andreessen and Mike Hearn. They simply just weren't very good as engineers, and it's in such a stark contrast to something like Ethereum, which constantly is adding stuff and only fixes stuff when they find the vulnerability or something like that. That thing is a disaster, and most projects in this space are like that. All right, so let's talk about Trezor. I talked a little bit about this on Tone's show, but this is essentially some security researcher found the vulnerability in a PSBT, and what you have to do is have multiple SegWit transactions that are signed, and then construct a third transaction taking one signature from the first one and another signature from the second one, combining them and creating this third transaction, transmitting that to the network. And it might have much larger fees than normal. Now, it won't get relayed on the network. So what you have to do to exploit this vulnerability is to transmit it to yourself. The malware would have to transmit this transaction to some miner that could then mine it and claim those Bitcoins. So that would be the only way to execute an attack like this. This would show up very obviously on the blockchain. We haven't seen a single instance of it, but it is a vulnerability, so they've patched it. Unfortunately, that means that a lot of third-party tools won't work with it. Anything that uses HWI, or hardware wallet interface, and that includes BTC Pay, Wasabi, and some others. So something to know, you don't have to upgrade your Trezor firmware if you don't think this is a vulnerability. It would have to be a very specific malware. I know of no malware like that out in the wild, though you never know. So yeah, take that with a grain of salt. All right, Norbit has been modified, and that bit modification has been merged in, so we can see exactly what changed here. But basically, it's committing to all of the script pub keys, and this is, it's not just a one script pub key that's the out point. It's every script pub key, and that way you know what the transaction is doing in its entirety before you sign it. And this is to mitigate against attacks like the one that I just talked about. Europol has a report on Wasabi Wallet. This is an interesting read. Basically, they're saying, if you use Wasabi's mixer, it's going to be Wasabi is a very effective decentralized Bitcoin mixer with many privacy-focused options. It provides possibly the most convenient and secure way to mix Bitcoin. So I can't think of a better way to endorse Wasabi, Wasabi's mixing service, than something from a police department that says this is really hard to trace and so on. Jameson Lopp has this piece on private key management, which I thought was pretty good. The do's and don'ts of Bitcoin private key management. It talks about how to not get phished, typo squatting, installing malware. It doesn't turn your address to a Bitcoin code. Bunch of other things, technical weaknesses based on Shamir and others, seed security, and basically these are all things that you have to be very careful about. This is a good article to send to somebody that is fairly new to Bitcoin that's trying to secure their own seed. These are the vulnerabilities that they should watch out for. All right, Lightning. Gleb Naumenko and Antoine Riard have written on this time dilation attack on the Lightning network, and essentially what it is it's you first isolate the node, and we talked about that a little bit with the Erebus and the Trezor, well, not Trezor, the Erebus stuff. But essentially, what you do is you isolate it, and then you deliver blocks kind of late, and that way you can kind of cheat the node that you have a channel open with by delivering blocks late and not giving them enough time to punish you for cheating them. So it's a particular type of attack, and like right now with some of the Bitcoin Core improvements, it makes it more difficult, ASN bucketing and things like that. But it is an attack, and figuring out how to make it more difficult to execute an attack like this is an ongoing research project. All right, Rusty Russell. He has a nice article attacking the 57 varieties of pyrite. Exchanges are now the enemy of Bitcoin. And this is for all of those exchanges that are selling anything other than Bitcoin. And many of them make it very, very difficult to buy Bitcoin. And like to add on top of it, they lose a lot of Bitcoin. Basically his argument is don't send anyone to an exchange, especially not a market leading one. Find some service that actually wants to sell them Bitcoin, like Cash App or Swan Bitcoin. And I agree. A lot of exchanges are making it very difficult to buy Bitcoin, like Coinbase and many others. So send them to other places instead. Leo Zhang, looks like I didn't link the article. That is tragic, which means Leo Zhang, Medium, because that article was amazing. That is probably not the right Leo Zhang. Medium mining. Why can't I find this article? Oh, that's tragic. Anyway, he wrote an article on the economics of Bitcoin miners. I'll find it and link it later. But basically, there's three different cycles that Bitcoin miners have to deal with. The first is the halving schedule. So that happens every 4 years in Bitcoin. And based on that, they have to prep for it and obsolete certain equipment and so on. It's also something really interesting with the climate cycle. So it turns out that the climate cycle affects electricity price quite a bit. And this makes sense since a lot of the electricity that miners use comes from hydroelectric dams, and those during rainy season can generate way more electricity than during a drought. So there's a climate cycle that and it's usually yearly, that they have to adapt to. And then there's the hardware upgrade cycle. So new generations of ASICs, better processes, shrinking down the lithography and things like that. So they have to balance all of that. So it turns out that even now, Antminer S9s can be useful to certain miners that can get like below 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour electricity, because it's still kind of profitable according to the math. So traditionally, a lot of equipment has tended to last about 1 or 2 years. That cycle has lengthened somewhat, so it's now 3 or 4 years, which might explain some of Bitmain's troubles, because they're used to creating equipment that's on a 1 to 2 year time scale. Now it's becoming 3 or 4. Sylvain Sorel reports, oh man, I didn't link this either, reports on GBTC activity, specifically that they're adding a lot of Bitcoin to their position. Sylvain Sorel. Medium. Yeah, there it is. I think. Which one was it? Huh. Well, it looks like Sylvain's been writing a lot. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, this one was it. Grayscale is massively accumulating Bitcoin in advance of the upcoming market. So this this talks about all of the reward and how much Grayscale is currently accumulating, and it's a lot. They're accumulating more than is being mined every day, and this may indicate that there's a lot of money going into GBTC as more retail investors come in. I'm going to link this post right now before I forget, so you guys have access to it. Let's see, Sylvain. All right. Yeah, so that's an excellent blog to subscribe to, by the way, if you're interested. Update on website now. Okay, so that was Sylvain's article. Coinbase is selling Bitcoin data, chain analysis stuff to the IRS and the DEA. I can't say that I'm happy about this, and I really hope that people start dropping Coinbase, even on this alone. The fact that, I mean, it's one thing if you're subpoenaed for this information. Yeah, I can understand giving them that, giving them data on that, but like proactively offering services, it's like, okay, the only way that works is if there's a lot of people depositing into Coinbase. That means that the less people do business with Coinbase, the better it'll be for everyone else's privacy. So I think it's in everyone's interest to not use Coinbase, essentially. Bloomberg basically says, expects Bitcoin to double to 20,000 this year, says something needs to go really wrong for it not to appreciate, which I found hilarious. It's a long way from what it used to be. All right, let's move on to my Twitter feed. It's a part of the show where I explain some of my tweets from the past week. We don't really have a long read because Bitcoin Core 20 is out now. All right, let's see. So that was it. All right, every time there's a crisis, I now think, what are they going to cram down our throats now? Bitcoin doesn't cram anything down your throat. So the latest rumor is that maybe a lot of these police departments get defunded, but then we get federal police, which would be really sucky. yeah, I mean, that's a police state for you. Bitcoin is over 10,000 again. Like every other era, this era will look cheap eventually. Unfortunately, it didn't hold 10,000, but hey, it's still awesome that you can get Bitcoin under 10,000. Blindside is 2020. That was my way of saying hindsight is 2020. It's actually been like the craziest year ever. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that government has way too much power in all aspects. They control the communication mediums, the money supply, the military, and the police. We can start taking some of that power back with Bitcoin. I think that was my most popular tweet this week. Yeah, hey, the government just has too much power. If you want to defund government, start buying Bitcoin. The cognitive load for the people that believe all the different, often contradictory narratives of the mainstream media is on par with those that slavishly follow Ethereum. And yeah, Ethereum, unfortunately, is very contradictory in its different narratives, and they must have learned it from various media outlets. So who's working on a Bitcoin Citadel? I would love to see a Bitcoin Citadel. If you don't know what that is, it's basically an enclosed community that's secure and so on with a bunch of Bitcoin OGs. Realizations made by the public from the past 6 months. Money is broken, system is rigged, security is hard, experts can be horribly wrong, politicians wield too much power, the world is fragile. I don't think I could design a crisis that's better for Bitcoin adoption. Then again, this might be true all the time. I'm starting to get the feeling the authorities are willing to use any excuse to lock us up for a long time, and this seems to be the case right now. Stealing is high time preference, building is low time preference, fiat increases time preference, Bitcoin decreases time preference. Which world would you rather live in? So time preference is a major thing about civilization. The lower time preference we have, the more we build for the future. And I want to see stuff like Bitcoin take hold so that everyone has lower time preference and we build civilization and good things again. Fear is what leads to consumption. It's not a coincidence that continuous consumption is part of neo-Keynesian economics. Bitcoin sets you free. And yeah, fear is what leads to consumption, and it's unfortunate, but that's part of neo-Keynesian economics, to make you scared of something or other all the time. Bitcoin hopefully gives you more courage that way. New trend in 2020, corporate virtue signaling. Can someone please make these emails stop? And I wrote this because I keep getting these emails about, oh, in this uncertain coronavirus time, we're here for you, from some company that I did business with like 4 years ago. Now I'm getting emails, we want to stand with George Floyd, from a business from 4 years ago. It's like, come on, man, corporate virtual signaling just is getting on my nerves. Everyone that wants to defund the police, you can start by defunding the state. How do you defund the state? By taking the power of money printing away from them. Yep, Bitcoin. And yeah, defund the police, defund government first. Voting with your wallet will send better signals to those who are in power than any vote in any election. And this is true. How you spend your money is what people care about the most. Freedom of assembly for protesters, but not for churches. This is how civil liberties die. Synagogues in New York City are meeting to protest to get around these unconstitutional restrictions. And Tone made a joking tweet the other day that he's going to say justice for George Floyd as part of his barbecue, because you still are not allowed to meet in groups of 12 or more in New York City. But if it's a protest, they're allowing more than 100 people. Please wait while lockdowns are being converted to curfews. Yeah, seems like most people are full-time employed and happy, but there's a significant amount of people that are unemployed or full-time and looking. So interesting. All right, are there physically hidden Bitcoin treasures? Asking since Fenn's treasure has apparently been found. So if you don't know what Fenn's treasure is, it's this guy that hid $1 million worth of gold in a small, in a treasure box and hid it somewhere in the Rockies, and it got found literally yesterday. Yeah, I was wondering if there was something similar with Bitcoin treasure. And whatever it started as, lockdowns are completely political at this point. Health experts say that you should still close business and stay indoors unless it's to protest. which is hilarious. You know, that's this is the actual, as public health advocates, we do not condemn these gatherings as risky for COVID-19 transmission, which is just it's completely politicized at this point. Anyway, that's about it for today. Let's see if there are any questions. All right, what is shadow mining, Jimmy? It's mining without putting your name into the mining block, I think. There might be another definition of shadow mining in there as well. All right, let's see. Grape Street base buy. That's not a question. Do you think the team is already working on security relating quantum computers? I've already talked about quantum computing. Please watch my other videos. Is this pre-recorded? No. Where else can I exchange Bitcoin for cash or vice versa? Local Bitcoin's a good one. Hodl Hodl is another good one. So I would recommend those. All right, so that's about it. Please buy my books if you are interested. The links are down below in the show notes. Little Bitcoin book and Programming Bitcoin. All right, Fiat Delenda Est. This song is done.